Okay, I think it's about time that we get started. Excusez-moi. Merci beaucoup. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ren Haiyan from the Humboldt Center for Transdisciplinary Studies, and welcome to the second seminar of the Order and Progress series. In our last session, Professor Jiang Lihua has already given a rather comprehensive introduction to the stunning academic achievements of Professor Dr. Ottmar Ette. But the Ottmar, as I know, is a living example of kindness and courage. He's always curious and is never afraid of stepping outside of the comfort zone. And the establishment of our Humboldt Center for Transdisciplinary Study in China is a remarkable example. Thanks to him, we're able to have up-close communication with leading scholars from Europe, from Latin America, in Changsha. And in so doing, he's also bringing Changsha to the rest of the world. That is how we get unusual news coverage in very important newspapers in Berlin. Lihua mentioned that Ottmar is also a writer. But do you know that he decided to create this new identity, to open this new page of his life only 4 years ago? And within these 4 years, in addition to his academic activities, he finished drafting 4 novels, 2 of which have already been published and are very well received in Germany. And 2 days ago, in the morning, he told me that the first paragraph of his 5th novel has already been delivered. So for those who are interested in this great mind, you may find an interview with him published in Chinese in the journal Foreign Literature. 北外的这个外国文学有一篇他的访谈。So thus it is indeed a great honor and pleasure to have Ottmar with us here in Changsha again. And in the first talk, Ottmar sketched with admirable succinctness a beautiful narrative of narration, tracing back to the time when written form is yet to develop. This not only reminds us of the multi-forms of narration, which leads to the realization that the concept of literature or narration is and
And so we can see that the hero, so to speak, of this short story will become a young man, and then at a given moment he is learning things and unlearning things, and he gets smaller and smaller. And well, before, okay, I understood. I just wanted to tell you that his marriage is a kind of demarriage, and he gets back to freedom, and so he is reconciliated with a group of young people where he is living, and not in his family as in his later life. And then he becomes a child, and at a given moment he is a very young child, and then he disappears in the body of his mother. And his mother had died during birth, and so is disappearing in the body of his mother and giving life to his dead mother, and so starting into life and into a cosmic atmosphere. So this is just an example to tell you that in literature you can do anything. You can, it's like a laboratorium. It's like something where you can do experiments, experimentation in life, and this is quite interesting to change the direction, the vectoricity of your life, and so you can see things in a different way. So the marriage, so going into creating a family and so forth, if you reverse it, it can be seen as opening up again, and you're in your peer group and in studying, for example, and it's a much it's a very open structure of life and so forth. So changing the irreversibility of life, of our daily life, into the reversibility of literature makes you think about the different periods of your life. And this is exactly what Alejo Carpentier tried to develop in that story, travel or journey to the origin, Viaje a la Semilla. So you can see that literature is very close to life. It's extremely close to life, but it is not identical with life. It is not just life. It's something different. When you take the very first literary text we know, so about around 2200 before our era, if you take the Gilgamesh epics in Mesopotamia, then you can see from the very start that you have, it's a very sophisticated narration, that you have fiction in it from the very start. Fiction is something we have in our daily life as well. And here I'm referring to Vargas Llosa, which is, he just died. Perhaps you have seen that a couple of 4 weeks ago or so. He just died. Nobel Prize laureate as well, Mario Vargas Llosa. And he said that fiction is freeing us, gives us freedom, getting out of the prison of history. And he makes a difference between good fiction and bad fiction. And he is not talking about literary fiction, good fictions and bad fictions, but he's talking about the bad fictions we are living with all day long, because we are living with different fictions continually. For example, the stock exchange, that's of course bad fiction. it's about how things in economy would continue to be, and then you give your money or you don't give your money or you withdraw your money from that. It's fiction, but it's in Mario Vargas Llosa's terms, it's bad fiction. Or let's say you're living in the fiction that you are studying, and then at a given moment there will be an exam, and then there will be the profession and so forth. It's a fiction, it's an imagination that is fueling your daily life, right? So we are living in fictions. We are living in fictions. Or you have the weather forecast, and then you see that tomorrow will be a wonderful day, but perhaps tomorrow is not so wonderful. But you're living in the fiction that there is a future of that will come exactly like it has been announced. So this is not the fiction I'm talking about. These are fictions that are everyday life, but it's a fiction. Literary fiction is something created for you, for the readers, in order to create a whole world and to try to put you as a reader in a world that is different and similar to the world you are living in actually. So for example, my Alejo Carpentier example is simply, it's very close to life, it's very close to daily experience, but it's just the other way around. So it makes you understand that the problems of your life from a different perspective. Yeah. So it's that kind of laboratory that is extremely important. You change your perspective, and by identifying with different points of view, with different perspectives, you understand much better another person, another nation, another culture, by just trying to take the position, be in the position of the viewer. This is very important. Do you have any question about that? Do you have a question on behalf of the difference between story and plot, or do you have a question on behalf of the irreversibility or the changes of perspective? Is there any question in the room? Don't be shy, go ahead. No, not so much, not for the moment. Just try to figure out any question and write it down, and then later you will tell me, right? So there are different models for different fictions in literature. How narration is trying to capture us and to bring us in a different world. I have already mentioned that our life is a journey. It has a beginning and it has an end, right? So literature is able to go beyond your end and to go beyond your birth. So for example, a character, the hero of a novel, you are born at a given moment and you don't remember being born. You know the stories about your birth. Perhaps your mother or your father told you about your own birth, but you have no consciousness on behalf of your birth. But this in literature you can change that. One of the great novels, another Nobel Prize laureate, Günter Grass, has imagined a boy being born and completely conscious of that moment in die Blechtrommel. So he develops that kind of idea how somebody comes to life and being completely aware of that in contrast to your daily experience. Or you can imagine, of course, that you die, and after your death you have no consciousness, at least as far as we know. In religion we have different kinds of, let's say, fictions that give different rooms and times for you to understand your own death. But this is exactly how literature can deal with that. Humans have always been trying to define the moment of their own death. So, for example, one of the great philosophers of the 18th century in Germany, when he felt that he would die during the next moments, he tried to bring all his students around his bed, where he had his agony. And then he told them, okay, please watch me, please note every detail of my death, and I will tell you that now I am dying. My heart beats, my heart beats, my heart stops to beat. And this is the moment when he died. Mein Herz schlägt, mein Herz schlägt, es schlägt nicht mehr. The last moment of consciousness. Yeah. And this is how you can go into this very last moment of your life. But in literature, very easily you can go behind. You can go beyond. You can imagine how somebody has died, and that now you're going to a different planet or whatsoever. You imagine how your afterlife, how the life after your death would be. That's very easy in literature. So it's a kind of laboratory, and then you can see from the point of view of your afterlife, you can see your whole life. You can see your whole life, and as I told you at the very start, telling stories is making sense. It's making sense in the sense that it attributes a meaning to what you have been living. It attributes an understanding of the things you were living. And so it's extremely important to see that. I will come back to this point a little bit later. So let's repeat. There's something as an itinerary structure in our life. Okay? When we tell a story, sometimes it's just like a journey through life. So travel literature is telling you stories that are based on an itinerarium. Yeah, you're starting to travel, and then at a given moment you travel through different countries, let's say, and then at a given moment you arrive at a given at the last point of your journey, right? So if we take, for example, Marco Polo's travel to China and his stay in China, you can see how telling this story is telling sense. You may know that Marco Polo did write the story down, or he was telling to a writer the things the writer wrote down in prison. So it was like from the perspective of prison, looking back at his journey to China and his long stay in China. Or if we take another traveler, so for example, Ibn Battuta, so the Arab traveler, the famous Arab traveler from Tangier which is in today's Morocco, just in front of Spain, in the port of Gibraltar, so in northern Africa. He was traveling not only to Arab countries, but he was traveling to Arab communities in China. So, for example, in Fujian and in Beijing and so forth, in Arab communities, because he wanted to know all about the presence of Arabic culture on this planet. Okay, so his itinerary is starting in Tangier in northern Africa, and then he goes all the way along through different countries, arriving in China. And telling this story is making sense, but making sense in the sense of giving all the details of his knowledge and putting these details into a story. We call that encyclopedia. It's like an encyclopedia. You go to a place and then you tell what are the people that are living in that place, what are they living of, what exchanges do they have, what is their economic, political, social, and so forth background, what is their religion, and so forth. So you're telling your story in an itinerary way. You can place all your knowledge into that story. Yeah, that's very important. That's very important. So itinerary is something, is a method to bring together all you know about a different, specific object. All travel literature is about this. So, for example, in China, you take the example of Xu and Xu is going to different places. What he does is not one single travelogue, but different travels. Yeah, always coming back to the point of from where he starts, and then going on to a different region. And so, let's say, exploring different parts of China, exploring the sources of the rivers of China, exploring the newly conquered places in China, everything that is under the sun, or as Chinese say, everything 天下, everything that is under heaven. And so it's an exploration about everything that is under heaven. And you can easily understand that this is encyclopedic as well, because all the knowledge he is able to bring together in his travelogue is put in that form and transformed into a story. Because you always see the traveler, you always see the traveler that comes with a friend, that comes with a brother, that comes with monks, and so forth, traveling through China. And eating here and eating there, going to a Buddhist temple and then going up the hill to the mountains and so forth. So it's a story in an itinerary relationship with life, because he has spent, like Ibn Battuta, all his life traveling. For decades, he was on the road, always walking, always going to different places in China, going to the north, going to the south, going to the west, going to the east, and trying to bring together everything he happened to know about China. So a story is are the different elements you can assemble from a given object, let's say China. And then the plotting is very important, the fundamental plot here is the journey, itinerary structure. But you can always change it, because you can go forward and backward when you write down your story. You can go back and you can say, 3 years ago I went to this mountain, that mountain, and it looked like this mountain, you know. So it's and then you talk about the people and the places you have been eating delicious meals in China, and then you compare it, and then here it's much more la than in other places, right? So it's you can go backward and forward in your own story. This is plotting. So when I say an itinerary structure, that doesn't mean that it's going day by day. You can always change, right? And you can always transform it. So this is where we are working on Alexander von Humboldt here in the Humboldt, in our Humboldt Institute, in our Humboldt Center for Transdisciplinary Studies. And when studying Humboldt, you see that the itinerary structure is much more complex in Humboldt, because he breaks sometimes this structure. So for example, chapter 27 to 29, it's just a kind of reflection on the island of Cuba. It comes at a given moment, but there is no itinerary structure, at least in 2 volumes. There's no itinerary structure. It gets out of the itinerary structure in order to present a different story. And the story is a story of Cuba. And then later he publishes, well, earlier he publishes a book in 3 volumes about Mexico. And there is no itinerary structure either. So this is very important. And he was quite a literary genius as well. He knew about things, how you could imagine this kind of traveling. So traveling from the very start, from the Gilgamesh epics, is something that is there. The traveling structure is there. From the very start, the first verses of Gilgamesh is the vision of a traveler going up to the sun, going through all the planet, and going down to the center of the earth. These are the first verses in Gilgamesh. So it's a traveler. And from the very start, you have that kind of very complex structure, itinerary structure there. I said that it's a very complex structure, and so we can understand that during thousands of years, humans have told stories making sense. And the more they were telling stories, the more they were inventing different forms of plotting, different forms of structures that were transformed into a complex plotting. Yeah. So at the moment when Humboldt wrote his travelogues, of course there were literary models that were in a way following the path of the Gilgamesh epics. Think about the first first modern Western novel, the Cervantes Don Quixote. He's traveling all over Spain. In the first volume in Spain only, and then in the second volume they're sometimes outside what at that moment is Spain. So it's traveling. And in Denis Diderot, in a French writer in the 18th century, he takes that model. He has 2 travelers, as in Don Quixote by Cervantes, but there is something that they change all the time the directions. It's an itinerary structure, but it is completely unforeseeable. There is no plan. So, for example, Xuxiake, he wanted to go there, and so he took his all his belongings and his companions, and he went there. But what is our life? Our life is, in a way, unforeseeable. You don't know where you will be within 2 years or 5 years. You don't know it. You have a fiction in your head about the things you will do in 5 years, within 5 years, but you don't know it. So this structure by Denis Diderot is much more applied to your life, to the experience of your life. It's unforeseeable. And at the very end of the story he is telling in Jacques le Fataliste et son maître, and at the very end, Denis Diderot invents something that has become very familiar to you today in the 21st century. That means he leaves up to the reader if he wants to or if she wants to create a story that ends in this way or in that way. So it's an interactive way to end a story ending, yeah, and it's interactive. So every reader can make his choice. There are different ways to end the stories, and every reader can decide, okay, I will take the first or I will take the third story, the third ending of the story that Denis Diderot is telling me, is writing down. Yeah, and so there are many different ways to break the itinerary structure, the plotting of a travelogue, the plotting of a journey. And if you go to the 20th century, in the second half of the 20th century, there you have narrative structures that are completely broken. That means that they are broken into different pieces. Of course, there is a traveling of Roland Barthes into Japan, but you don't learn so much about his own traveling. You see the different spots he has been visiting, the different places. He went to theater, he went through the bars in Tokyo, and so forth. There are different elements. He went to visit houses and so forth. So the travelogue has been broken into pieces, a different kind of plotting, different kind of plot, but still telling stories and making sense. Only that the way of telling the story is much more adapted to our daily life in that moment. Imagine how Ibn Battuta has been traveling. He was traveling like Marco Polo. They were walking, they were on horses, and sometimes they took a ship, right? They were traveling on a ship. This is exactly how Xuxiake was traveling as well, sometimes crossing a river and then going up a hill and so forth. So it was an absolutely foreseeable and continuous traveling. How do you travel today? For example, you take the airplane. So you go to the airport, and then your plane will take you to, I don't know, to Shanghai, but you don't know anything about the way the regions between Changsha and Shanghai, because the airplane is, well, flying all over the place. And so you arrive at Shanghai without having seen, or perhaps only from the window of your window seat, seen something of the landscape between Changsha and Shanghai. Now, so things are broken into pieces when we travel, or sometimes you take an airplane to Dubai, and from Dubai to Rio de Janeiro. But the only problem you have is that you can't see the in-betweens. You see when you start in Changsha, everything is clear. It's a story, and then you could not really tell the story. You will not tell the story that you enter the airplane, you get on your seat, fasten windows, fasten seat belts, and then you close the window, and then you have meals, and so that's not worth telling it, or don't you think so? So it's broken into pieces. Your traveling experience today in 20th century, in the second half of the 20th century, is broken into pieces, and even more in the 21st century. So telling a story today is something that is different from telling a story in the Middle Ages, at the very beginning of a literary experience, and so forth. So it has changed, fundamentally changed. You may know that this in cinema, of course, is very present as well. So in video clips, for example, young people are much more able to understand a story that is broken into small pieces. And there are complete changes of perspectives all the time, because you're much more in an aesthetics of video clips that are broken into pieces. Elderly people have problems with that. So telling stories has an evolution.